Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome back to another PorscheCooled Podcast, the podcast where we talk about all things Porsche. This podcast, before I get into that, my name is Michael Barth, and this podcast is an extension of my YouTube channel. It's an extension of my love of Porsche. That's right, my love of Porsche. So we're a Porsche-centric type channel here. We talk about all things Porsche, not just 911s, but we do just talk about all things Porsche. The last couple of episodes, if you've been listening, if you haven't, check them out. They're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, everywhere, basically, Podbean, pretty much every podcast supplier, podcast host, or whatever you call it, you can find the PorscheCooled Podcast. Just do a search in Google and it will come up pretty much everywhere. So the last few podcasts, we've been having conversations with my friend Steve. Steve is a Porsche owner, a Porsche enthusiast, and a good friend of mine from Sydney, Australia. He currently drives a 997 GT3, but he's owned 964s and 993s as well. But if you haven't listened to those last two episodes, have a listen. I will be recording another episode with Steve this evening. I'm in Bahrain. He's in Australia, in Sydney, Australia. I do these recordings with him in the evening, so I'm going to do another recording with him this evening, and that will be loaded up. It probably won't be loaded up until next week, probably next Monday or Tuesday. What I'm going to try and do going forward is I'm going to try and do 2 episodes a week again, which is what I keep promising you guys, and I only deliver 1. But I'm going to try and do 2 episodes a week. One may be without Steve and one may be with Steve, or they might be both with Steve, depending on the time we have and depending if we can coordinate each other's schedules. But this one, you've got me. I'm just talking today, so we're back to the original format. No conversations, so you're going to have to listen to my voice for the next 30, 40 minutes or so, depending on how long I can talk for. I hope you enjoy this podcast, but welcome back. And once again, I just want to say thank you to everyone who has followed this podcast and everyone's been listening to the podcast. The results, the feedback so far, and everything has been fantastic. You guys are really supporting the podcast channel, and I really, really appreciate that. So thank you for that. If you have any questions or you have anything you'd like us to discuss on the podcast, especially when Steve's here and when we're chatting together about the 911 or the 997, as we both own a 997, as you know. He owns the GT3, white GT3 997.1, a very, very cool car. And I own the 997 Carrera. If you check out P997.1 on Instagram, you'll see lots of pictures of my car if you haven't been there already. Steve doesn't tend to post on Instagram, so you won't see many pictures of his car, but you will see his car on my Instagram. So if you go to my Instagram, you will see it. This is PorscheCooled also has its own Instagram, which is just simply PorscheCooled, one word. If you just do a search for that, it's on Instagram. Lots of great pictures of Porsche. Porsche 911s predominantly, but lots of pictures of Porsche. So we also have that Instagram, so please follow if you haven't been there already and say hi. But if you have any questions, please send me a DM. The links to the Instagram are in this podcast. Send us a DM and ask us what you would like to talk about, what you would like us to talk about on the podcast. We're happy to take questions or discuss things that you guys are interested in. So now we're over and done with that. What's been happening this week? Well, this week has been a little bit of a mix-up here for me in Bahrain. The company we work for, unfortunately, has had positive COVID-19 cases in their office. Luckily, I haven't been working from the office, and I've been working from our home here in Bahrain. So hopefully we have not been in contact with it. But quite a few people from the office have tested positive, so that's not a good thing. The parts that I ordered, you guys will remember that I've ordered some parts for my 997 Carrera. I've ordered some leather parts. I'm going to talk about those sort of things in this podcast, but we're going to talk about them more in depth with Steve in the next podcast. So that's a good one coming up. Like I said, that's coming up, which will be probably early next week. It'll go live. But I found out today that my parts are being made. They're in process. I just got an email from Design LS in UK. And my sun visors have been done, so that's one thing done. So I'm pretty excited about that. The leather sun visors, a little bit of decorative cross stitch on one side and then just plain stitch on the other as per the OEM specifications. So they're done, and my other parts are being made. We're off to London. My wife and I are off to London on what day? In a couple of weeks' time, we're going to London. Unfortunately, when we get to London, we're going to have to quarantine, which is a bit of a hassle, but we are going to London. Hopefully, I'm going to catch up with some people in London when I'm there, and hopefully do some more Porsche filming, more Porsche podcasts, just keep it up. So that's the plan. I'm not sure how, hopefully London doesn't get worse with the COVID-19 thing, but we are off to London just for a break from Bahrain. What else? My obsession with the 912, it's still here. Unfortunately, today I looked at I found an Instagram post that someone was doing seats for the 912. I think it was Patrick Motorsports. Has anyone heard of that? Patrick, I'm going to have to find it now because I need to tell you guys what it actually is. I think it was Patrick Motorsports. Let me just find it. I'm just checking through my Instagram, so excuse the silence while I check. What is the website? M. Laszlo 944. It's got Patrick Motorsports, and it's pictures of a seat which he's putting in a 912. It's actually made my obsession with the 912 even greater by seeing this seat. The seat is called Cobra. It's a Cobra seat. Have you guys heard of that? It comes in standard black leather, but they've customized it like it's Singer style with studs and things like that, and then gingham. I'm probably getting off the track, but I'm basically saying, what I'm saying is that my obsession with the 912 is still there. It hasn't gone away. I also saw a really good post on Gary from Classic FX. Classic FX is in the UK. If you need any upholstery done in the UK, you should check out Gary. He's very, very good. He's got a picture of a 69 912, and the 69 912 is the one that I'm actually after. The 69 912 is the long wheelbase version. So as I've said before, it's 2.5 odd inches longer. So what's that? 2.5, 5, what is it? 7 centimeters longer or something like that than the standard short wheelbase. With the 912, you have 65 to 69 in the 912. I've read that the 68s aren't as good because of the emissions regulations they had to go through in the US. I'm not sure whether that's true. I like the idea of the 69. Someone on YouTube told me there were 3 for sale in Australia. I realized there was 2. I didn't realize there was 3. There's another green one that came up for sale in Australia, which has been slightly optioned in the way I wouldn't like it. I like the ones with the steel wheels. But if you have a look at the one on Classic FX Porsche, which is Gary's site, he's done the interior of one with like a check sort of insert, tan leather, black dash, and it's also green as well. It's the Irish green, which is really, really nice. So the more pictures, I think it's a post actually about air conditioning where you can get classic retrofit air conditioning system. You can get it fitted to a 912. And I noticed the gear knob is also a wood, the wood gear knob as per the Carrera GT as per the Porsche racing cars. Steve actually, who you all know from the podcast, he actually got that wood gear stick for his 997 GT3. We'll talk about that in the next podcast, but he actually did get one of those from, now I don't know how to pronounce it. It's the guy in Poland, Carbone or Carbon, CAR-BONE, which is a really good site, which I'll talk about a little bit in this episode. But we will also talk more about it in the next episode. But anyway, seeing these pictures from M. Laszlo 944, which is Patrick Motorsports. His is also a green one in the background, which they're working on. I like it when it doesn't have the hubcaps where you can see the bolts on the wheels. I think the 912 is a really, really good one to get. And I'm still searching it, and I'm still trying to work out a way to do it. I still like the idea of getting one from the US that only costs, if it only costs $30,000, I say only, but if it costs $30,000, that's not bad to get it sent to Australia with the shipping and the tax that's added on. It doesn't end up being too much money. Even if it's not fully drivable to begin with, at least the base is there, and at least then I can start customizing it and making it better, restoring it, I guess, to a certain degree. I do really like the idea of the slate grey color, which is always a paint to sample or PTS color for GT3s, new 911s. The colors I like the Irish green. I like the slate gray. Most slate grays have been repainted, though. It obviously that when people had the slate gray, they didn't think it was cool enough. And I quite like the orange. I know that's crazy, but I actually quite like the tangy kind of orange color that it comes in the 912. Most important for a 912, though, is, matching numbers, reasonably okay mechanically. Inside, you can get it fixed. It's a pity I'm not based in the UK, and it's a pity the car has to go to Australia, because I would use Gary for his work at Classic FX. His work is amazing. It looks absolutely amazing. I would use him, but I guess if I bought a car in the UK, I could get it done in the UK and then send it, but we'd have to see what happens there. Like I said, UK prices, Europe prices on the 912, if you're looking at them and you go through all the classic car sites, they're very expensive. A lot of these cars come from the US and they're shipped from California, whether it be from Beverly Hills Car Club or off Bring a Trailer, and then the price just goes up, 50% once they hit Europe. They're just crazy prices. I saw one the other day, a 69 912 for 79,000 euro, which is, I think, is just way too much, way too much. Anyway, this is not about the 912. Well, it kind of is. It's kind of about every model of the 911. So that's my week. That's where I've been. I have exercise to keep me sane. Luckily, our building has a gym, and I've been exercising regularly, so that's the best part about it. But I read something. I wasn't going to do a podcast today. Like I said, I was going to record the one with Steve tonight, and then we were going to put that one up. But I've done this because I thought this is a good lead-in to the one with Steve anyway. So, Steve, if you're listening, that's why I'm doing this one. It's a bit of a lead-in to ours, which I'll tell you tonight, but I might put this up today, so you may already listen to it. But I read a really good quote. I read it on, I think it was the New York Times, actually. I think it was the New York Times, and it was an article about, I don't think I've saved, yeah, it was a New York Times, and it was called The Car You Buy Because You Love Driving, and it was an article, it was basically a review of the 2021 911 Turbo S. But there was a really good quote in it, and I think it's a good one, and it's quoted by someone called Mr. Strauss. I don't know who Mr. Strauss is. I should look it up, but I just copied this quote. Just wanted to tell you guys. Porsche is the car you buy because you love driving. The owners care about the experience more than the image, the way they look in the car. All right. So I thought about that quote, and I thought, well, that's an interesting quote, and I want to talk about the cost of options on a Porsche, the cost of going crazy on a Porsche, the variety and the sheer amount of options that new Porsches have. And I want to go back to that quote, because Porsche is the car you buy because you love driving. The owners care about the experience more than the image, the way they look in the car. Just keep that in mind. We'll come back to that. So this article also had a little some stats in there, which I thought were quite interesting as well. Porsche's record 256,000 global sales last year. I'm guessing this is for 2019 because it's a 2020 article. Remain a blip in the VW Group's 10.8 million total. Yet the brand earned a staggering 4.75 billion operating profit, an average of about $18,500 US dollars, $18,500 US dollars per car, for 16.6% net profit that tops every mass market automaker. So the profit of every Porsche car is higher than any other automaker, and it's only $18,500 US dollars per car. The brand's blue chip value, including at resale, is highlighted by another impressive statistic. Very important. More than 70% of all Porsches ever built are still on the road. And since 1964, more than 1 million 911s have been made. 70% of all Porsches are still on the road. And I think that's what is important. And I think this is what drives what I'm kind of going to touch on today. The market out there. Well, let's go back to when you buy a new Porsche, right? The cost of options of a Porsche. as we know, every generation of the 911, and this is the same with every part of the Porsche range. I mean, whether it be a Macan or a Cayenne or Taycan or whatever it is. But let's just concentrate purely on 911s here. Porsche adds more and more options each generation, more and more things that you can add to the price of your Porsche, which goes up every year, and more things you can add that, which is expensive. Any new tech, anything that has a new name to it, whether it be GPS cruise control or whether it be GPS auto front lift on your 911, all these things have these fancy names and they all become very, very expensive, especially when they're new technology. And then you've got things where we've all gone through the configurator late at night. We've all sat there and gone to the 911 GT3 or the 911, the new 911 Carrera S, and spec'd it out to the way we want it. And the scary thing is when you see the price of the options add up and you see how much you're paying for an option. It's not for when you see how much you're paying for every option that you select. And the question is, do you really need them? This is the thing. Do you really need these options? We go back to that thing, owners care about the experience more than the image, the way they look in their car. Well, the experience made any better by having more expensive cruise control? Is the experience made any better by having better LED lights instead of just the standard ones? Is the experience made any better by having, more interior lighting? Is the experience made any better by having, all these add-ons that are offered to you by Porsche? Or should it just be simply the experience? The experience is the driving. The experience is, of course, the transmission, the brakes, it's about the drive. Of course, we all like to have a great color, and the color is important, but do we need all these other options? I mean, when you go back to Porsche years ago, and of course we're talking about, a long, long time and things have changed, but the options available were very small. There wasn't many options to choose from, You might have optioned Fouche wheels. You might have optioned, tinted glass. You might have optioned, very basic things, leather instead of leatherette. Not a lot of options to choose from. But it's quite scary. I read another article on a car site, I can't remember the name, and it was about, if you fully spec out the new Cayman GTS. And the Cayman GTS, the new one, is apparently very, very good. The 4.0 engine, no longer turbo, naturally aspirated. I think it's not the GT3 engine, it's GT4, it's Carrera S engine, I think. No, it couldn't be Carrera S because Carrera S is turbo. I thought I read it was a Carrera S. Anyway, the Cayman GTS engine is a 4.0 naturally aspirated. But basically, this article, all they were doing is they were speccing out. They were going on the configurator, and they were picking every conceivable option you could have for a Cayman GTS. At the end of it, the price of this Cayman GTS, and it was in US dollars, came out to be the price almost of a 911 Turbo. Now, that's when it gets a little bit insane. Let's be honest, it gets a little bit insane. Of course, we know this already. We know this happens. It's happened for many years now with Porsche. It doesn't stop people optioning their 911 or Porsche to the max. People keep going and people keep doing this. And Porsche obviously make a lot of money out of this. But where does it end? And, if it's about the experience, do we really need all this extra stuff? Do we really need to have all this extra stuff? Is it purely bragging rights? Is it purely, well, I'm going to spend 150,000 US, so I may as well spend another 50,000 US on options? Is that what it is? Is it the justification to people that we've spent so much already? What's another 50,000 US? Well, it's actually quite a lot. It's actually quite a lot. You could buy a new 911 and you could buy an old air-cooled 912 for 50,000 US. So it is a lot of money. And let's be honest, when you sell this car that you've fully optioned, and sure, I'm not saying you might not enjoy it a little bit better if it's got full leather interior, etc. But you sell this car and you never get back what you put into it. Let's be honest. You're not going to get back in a new 911 the cost of these options. Sure, we know when you sell a car, If you have certain options, it will make the car sell more quickly. It'll make the car more attractive. It may not necessarily get you a large increase in cost over one that is an option, but of course it will be the one that people will want first. It'll be the one that probably sells first, but it doesn't mean you're going to make a lot more money or make your money back on what you've put into it. And I think that's very, very important. I know when I was looking for my 911, I was still looking for certain things. I was looking for certain options. I would have liked to have had the Corona pack. Mine didn't have it. Do I need it? Probably not. I don't really miss it. I don't think I need it in the base Carrera. I don't think it adds anything to my experience. Would I have liked leather interior? Yes, I would have liked leather interior. But very few new 911s in Australia were spec'd with full leather interior. So there's all that extra stuff that you don't really need. You don't really need it. And sure, Porsche likes to push it. The cost of options really, I think the cost of options, it doesn't pay you back in the experience. It doesn't actually give you anything extra. And I think that when you're searching for a 911, I get lots of questions, because of my YouTube channel as well, and that I do get questions from people like, asking me about the 997 and asking me about things and that. But I think, I think because Porsche has such a strong heritage and such a strong history and the passion of the owners, what it's created is it's created this market and this OEM, official manufacturer, aftermarket or artisan specialist who's, using Porsche materials like, FX in UK, like Design LS that I'm getting my leather done in the UK, like Exclusive Option, like Carbone in Poland. All these people, they're all providing a service, an aftermarket service, which in some ways is more exciting and more interesting to do than to spec your Porsche out fully in the beginning. And maybe I'm talking about 996, 997s, and maybe people didn't spec their 996, 997s out, to such a degree. So then you come to today where a lot of people are wanting to improve their car. And this is also with air-cooled as well. And this is what is really, really nice and really enjoyable about Porsche ownership, especially when you have a Porsche that's not a new Porsche. When you go out and buy your 997 and it's your first 911, or you go out and buy a 996 that needs a bit of work, it's okay that it needs a bit of work because there are so many people, and I'll go back to my other podcast, so many guys, you got to have a guy for everything. And with Porsche, there really is a guy for everything. And it takes you a little while to find these guys, but eventually, everyone has a guy, everyone knows about who you can use. There's familiar people, common people that most people use, whether it be for your 911, like Exclusive Option for leather parts, Design LS, who's quite unknown, but in the UK, who's known in the UK for leather parts, Carbone for little extra accessories, and then you've got OEM suppliers like Suncoast Parts in the US, which a lot of people use, Design 911 in the UK, which I use, Pelican Parts. So you've got all these avenues, and that's just some of the. And then if you want, wrecked parts, you can go to LA Dismantler, who has like so many parts for so many 911s that you can just get, used parts. If you need a leather part, which I did for my 911, I got the console blades in leather from LA Dismantler for very little money, and in perfect condition. So there's so many avenues, there's so many places where you can get something special to, make your 911 that little bit better. Make it better than what it was when it was spec'd. Now, and the thing is, it's really, what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that it's really part of the Porsche journey. It is really something that's very exciting, and it's something that, I talk to people about it every day, that everyone enjoys doing things with their 911. Leather parts, simple leather parts, you know what I mean? Simple leather parts, which mine are in process that I'm getting from Design LS in the UK, who does fantastic work, by the way. Check out his Instagram. I could have got them from Exclusive Option in the US. Design 911, Design LS, is a little bit lower in price. Not a lot, but a little bit. But it was just easier for me to order from the UK because I can get them sent to the UK, and I don't have any problems with tax when they enter Australia because I've got to take them back to Sydney. But then, in my research for the 912, I've come across so many sites, so many people that are doing things for old 911s and 60s to 70s and 911s and 912s. Sierra Madre, I think it's called, or Sierra Madre, I think that's what it's called. They have reproduction parts, so many parts for the 912. And like I said, Gary at Classic FX, he does so many 912s. There was one for sale on Classic Cars in the UK that he'd done a champagne yellow one, which was beautiful. And then you've got the Coco mats. Coco mats is the original supplier of mats, so you can buy these things aftermarket. And then there's, what's the other company? Stoddard for all the early Porsche parts. There's so many places. And then if you live in the US, you've got the benefit of these engine guys, these passionate engine guys that just make your Porsche run, your air-cooled Porsche, your early 356 or your 911 or your 912, that can just tweak it and make it that little bit better. Will Hoyt, I think it's called Will Hoyt, who Spike Thurston always says is really good because they take their cars there. Polo Motors, which I know a guy in Australia has a black 912 who got his engine done at Polo Motors. And then you've got Rod Emery, the pinnacle. If you want a 356 Outlaw, get Rod Emery to do one. But, you probably need $300,000 US. I think I heard Will Hoyt talk about if you bring a 356 to him, make sure you give it a year because that's how far in advance he's booked out, and make sure you have around $150,000 to fix the engine. But what you get at the end of it, not just to fix the engine, to actually restore the car with the engine. But, is it worth it? I think it is worth it. And it keeps these cars on the road. And it goes back to that original thing that I was just reading at the beginning of this podcast. More than 70% of all Porsches ever built are still on the road. And I think that's what's really exciting about owning a Porsche. And I think that's what makes us feel so passionate about it. And I know I started this about the cost of options of Porsche, but my point is, if you want a 911, you don't need to have all those options. You just need the 911. In years to come, if you want things done to your car, if you want things added, and I'm not sure about the more modern cars actually, but if you want things added, look at me with the 997. It didn't have OEM wheels. I got the OEM wheels. The exhaust wasn't a Porsche Sports exhaust. I got a Fiesta Sports exhaust. Not OEM, but like OEM, and sounds fantastic. The leather inside my cabin, there's no leather. So now I'm getting leather parts done. I'm getting the sunroof console part done. I'm getting, the visors done. I'm getting other little bits and pieces done, which I'm going to talk about with Steve in the next podcast. But there's so many things you can do, and it's so exciting. And that's what's great about owning a Porsche. It's the passion. It's the people that are working on them. It's the people that provide the service. There's a few in Australia. There's a lot in the US, of course, around California. There's quite a few in the UK, a few I've mentioned. And it's a great community to be a part of. And, it's a really good thing to read that 70% of all Porsches are still on the road. I think that's what's great about it. And I think it's that passion that we all share, and we're all enjoying. We're all enjoying it. And I think that's what's great about Porsche ownership. It really is. And I've met so many people, not through this podcast, but just through my YouTube channel and just through owning the 997 and just sharing information that you have. And I think that's what's great about Porsche ownership. So back to the original quote, Porsche is the car you buy because you love driving. And I think that's very true. And I think we have to remember that point. And when you're about to buy your new GT3 or your new Carrera S, if you want one, you don't need all the options. You just need the 911. If you want things in year to come, you could do it. You just pick a few key things. You don't need to take all of them. You don't need to push the price of your 911 Carrera S into GT3 territory. You don't need to push the price of your Cayman into 911 or 911 Turbo, prices. You just need to be smart, and you just need to remember that it really is about the experience. It's about the driving experience. You don't necessarily need all those technical toys. And I think that's why now I've got back to the idea of getting a air-cooled 911. And originally I was thinking 993, 964, but I actually want to go back all the way to close to the beginning, which is why I'm looking at the 912. 911s in that year, in that sort of 65 to 69 are way too expensive. 912s are still reasonably affordable, not for very long, but I like the idea, as I said in, I think one of my earlier podcasts, a few back before I was doing the ones with Steve, is that it's okay to drive slow. I'm actually kind of liking the fact about driving a little bit slower and enjoying the experience. It doesn't mean I don't want a 997 GT3. It doesn't mean I'm going to sell my 997 Carrera, but I just want something different. I want to feel that experience, and the 912 I think will give that experience. I don't know whether it's going to happen. I hope it happens. I hope I can afford to do it. But for me, that's how I'm thinking at the moment. So that's. I hope this podcast isn't too scattered, but it's kind of like what I've been thinking, and I'm just talking out loud to you guys, and I hope you enjoy it. But I think that's about it for today. I'm getting muddled for words now, so I probably should finish this podcast. I'd just like to say thank you very much for listening. And if you have any questions, please just send me a DM on the Instagram, PorscheCooled, or Michael.Barth, or P997.1. They're the 3 Instagrams I have, but PorscheCooled is probably the best one to send it to because it's relevant to this podcast. I think that's about it for today. Like I said, I'm going to record a episode later this evening, about 10 o'clock my time, with Steve in Australia. And Steve and I are going to continue on with this conversation, but in a different direction, a slightly different direction. But we're going to talk about his car, we're going to talk about my car, and we're going to talk about people that we've used and the key options for the 997, the key things, I call it mods, but it's not really mods, but the key things you can do to make your 997 just that little bit better. That's the whole point of the next podcast. But anyway, thanks for listening today. I really appreciate all the support. This is Michael Barth, and this is a PorscheCooled podcast. We'll talk very soon. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.